Total Retail Talks listeners are invited to the 2026 Women in Retail Leadership Summit, held April 27th through the 29th at the JW Marriott Miami Turnberry Resort. Connect with senior retail leaders and gain new perspectives shaping the future of the industry. Register today at womeninretailsummit.com and save $100 with code PODCAST.
Welcome to Total Retail Talks, your podcast channel for retail knowledge.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of Total Retail Talks. I'm Joe Keenan, the editor-in-chief of Total Retail. I'm excited to be joined on today's episode by Isha Nicole. Isha is the Senior Vice President of Creative and Marketing at Boot Barn, and we're going to be discussing the rise of Americana style and the impact that it's having on Boot Barn's business. So Isha, thank you for joining me on today's show.
Thank you for having me.
So I'd love for you to tell the audience, I mentioned, as we start these episodes, I think most in the audience are familiar with Boot Barn. Tell us a little bit, for the few that may not know much about Boot Barn, tell us a little bit about the business and specifically tell us a little bit about your role within the organization as well.
So Boot Barn is America's largest Western and workwear retailer. We opened our doors in 1978. And upcoming, we're going to hit 500 stores. We open about a store a week, so we're aggressively expanding. My role within Boot Barn is I run the marketing, and our marketing has three prongs to it. It has a media division, creative division, and analytics division. And I'd say I lean a little heavier into the creative space because I used to be the creative director.
So that provides a nice context for the conversation. We're going to talk a little bit about creative and particularly style, merchandising a little bit as well, the product in today's show. So I alluded to it right at the start. I want to talk about Americana style. And in your eyes, Isha, why do you believe the Americana aesthetic continues really to resonate really across generations for consumers?
So we say that shoes are ordinary and cowboy boots are an American icon. So I think the cowboy boot is symbolic of something so much greater than a shoe you put on your foot. The iconic American cowboy is symbolic of this sort of pioneering spirit, carving out the West, this rebellious spirit, this grit, this tenacity, and something that's very real, rooted, grounded, and connected to the earth and each other. And I think in a era of the unknown with AI and we consume digital content at such a rapid pace, there's sort of a disconnect that I think everyone is feeling. And it's this universal yearning to connect to something more real.
And one of the things that's kind of brought this style into the mainstream is that many celebrities, people in the public eye, have started embracing wearing cowboy boots, wearing kind of the Americana style. Tell us a little bit about the influence you believe that has had on kind of this movement.
I think it's expanded the aperture to open up more doors to people coming into the West. So we look at, and it's not just fashion, of
Mhm.
course, it's branding, it's music for you look at artists like Post Malone or Beyonce, but it also extends to high fashion brands like Louis Vuitton in collaboration with Pharrell Williams for a show they did a few seasons ago. So we're seeing it everywhere.
As you think about the Boot Barn audience, how do you tap into that kind of influencer, whether it be a celebrity that's in the public eye, maybe sometimes not, maybe more of just like a social influencer? How do you think about that in terms of embracing this Americana style and how it relates back to Boot Barn's products?
Because Western fashion is everywhere, we're seeing people who you wouldn't historically identify as Western influencers or country or Western based celebrities, but we're seeing them embrace the West. And so, from a strategy perspective, it's important to us to hold on to our core and really celebrate the men and women that feed, build, and protect America, but also open up our doors and our arms to this new wave of influencers and pop culture icons who are celebrating Western fashion, whether that be in their branding, of course, in their fashion, in their art. And so it has become a piece of our marketing mix for sure.
I want to think about as we record this in early November, it's kind of the beginning of the holiday season. But, kind of put your forecasting hat on a little bit, Aisha, in terms of what we can expect in 2026 and the trends that you're forecasting in spring, particularly evolving silhouettes and materials to new cultural influences. I want to get your take on what you're forecasting for Boot Barn as we move into a new year.
I think it's important to lay the base that for us, Western isn't a trend. So we've been doing this for almost 50 years now, supporting the men and women that feed, build, and protect America. And the product we sell supports those communities. So although Western inspired fashion is a piece of the assortment, it's a small part of the pie. With that being said, though, I do think with America's 250th birthday celebration, we're going to be seeing everyone celebrate Americana in a large way this upcoming year. And I think we'll see it with, distressed denims and sort of a channeling a nostalgia with the vintage Americana overall aesthetic.
And how do you think about Boot Barn helping shape that narrative, that next chapter of the Western trend? Not a trend per se, but kind of that movement that's taken place.
Right. So I think we shape through authenticity. So going back to not being a trend for us. So for us, for example, in our marketing, we only use real cowboys. And so these are fifth and fourth generation working ranchers and cowboys. And we use that as the faces of our Boot Barn brand. So I think our objective is really opening up the West to the rest.
And in terms of the marketing, and I would imagine that's kind of a cohesive approach across multiple different touch points. Obviously, you talked about the growth that seeing within the brand and physical retail, but obviously the digital channels in which you're engaging with your shoppers. Tell us a little bit about how you prioritize and get that messaging out there from a marketer's point of view.
It's a challenging dance because you want to stay authentic to your core customer, but you also want to open up the doors because you're seeing this momentum within the mainstream space of people gravitating towards the West. So there's a strategy for us where anything that is Boot Barn branded is rooted in that tenacious spirit of the iconic American cowboy and celebrating that lifestyle. But then when we get into our sub brands like Boot Barn Just Country or Wonder West, we're able to attract a new consumer in our marketing. So Wonder West, for example, is our ladies fashion brand. And for that, we're able to sort of like tap into the trends that you're seeing going into festival season in spring and what we're forecasting there. And Boot Barn Just Country, for example, sort of how we differentiate it is on a Friday night, someone within the Boot Barn space is going to a rodeo, but maybe someone within the Boot Barn Just Country space is tailgating at a football game. So they're wearing cowboy boots every single day, but they're not a cowboy. And so you're really just tapping into the rugged ideals of the country lifestyle. And that, I think that sort of charisma is something that a lot of people can resonate with. So, that for us has been a strategy to sort of like keep our core, but also open up the room to talk to more people and welcome them into our brand.
Yeah, that's a great point. I was going to follow that up with thinking about almost looking at it as expanding the base, right?
Yep.
You have your core customer, but you can now with some of these sub brands expand the segments in which you're acquiring new customers as well, while also continuing to serve that core loyal Boot Barn customer.
Right. Absolutely.
And then how do you think you've talked a little bit, Aisha, about the product, but we also, this Americana aesthetic is evolving just beyond product, physical product and fashion.
Mhm.
It's kind of seeping into music, pop culture. How do you see that evolving as we again start this new year?
So I think it's going to continue to build momentum. We're seeing, artists like we mentioned before, Beyonce and Post Malone really taking to the West, and we're seeing it in their fashion, but also in their albums and their tours and their branding. We're also seeing it on a smaller scale with artists like Big X the Plug, and he just had a song come out with Ella Langley and Bailey Zimmerman. So we're seeing artists really tap into this space in a big way. And I think that It's something that will continue to build momentum, we'll continue to see. I don't think that this trend, for lack of better words, is going away anytime soon.
As more brands dip their toes into Western in this Americana style, it's becoming, to your point, it's kind of this rising popularity. How do you think at Boot Barn you can keep your fashions, your product feel fresh and relevant for today's consumer and kind of differentiate, right? I guess from the competition. There's more brands entering this space. How do you keep Boot Barn differentiated?
So for us, these themes are a staple and they're true to the iconic West. So certain Western themes like conchos or fringe or tooling, whip stitch detailing, those feel fresh to the mainstream consumer because they didn't grow up seeing their grandma wear that, their mom wear that, their friends wear that. And so I think a differentiator that we have from a point of authenticity is we've been doing this for so long that when it comes to the construction of a cowboy boot, for example, there's so much rich history there. And there's an authentic way to create a cowboy boot that is built to last. For us, we want to welcome as many people as possible into this space because the values of the West are something that I think everyone can benefit from and resonate with in the Western lifestyle. It's a lifestyle that's built on family and community and these really beautiful traditions. From, purely branding perspective, we always keep that in mind. And then from a product perspective, it's about, for us, this is what we've done since day one, and this is what we'll continue to do. So I think we have a very authentic point of view for that reason.
Yeah, and from what I'm hearing too, you've established that relationship with the customer, right? They've come to trust Boot Barn from the product, the messaging, the kind of relationship that you've established, which enables you to earn their trust, and they think of Boot Barn as a leader in this Western space. Is that fair to
Yeah,
say?
absolutely. But I will say this as well. What I find interesting from an artistic perspective is going back to the Pharrell Williams example with Louis Vuitton, like having people's interpretation of cowboy culture in the West be presented in fashion also influences us. So
Hmm.
even though we have sort of a tried and true perspective because this is what we do, it has from our Western fashion segment, for example, like it has influenced things in a really positive way. We're seeing things from a very fresh perspective. Our customer would never purchase a stiletto cowboy boot. But now we're entertaining the concept. Like, why not try it? Maybe they do want that for, line dancing on a Saturday night.
You have to also continue to be innovative and creative, right? You can't stand
Right.
still. You're going to get passed by.
Totally. Absolutely.
Well, I want to take the opportunity to thank Isha Nicole. She is the Senior Vice President of Creative and Marketing at Boot Barn for joining us on this episode of Total Retail Talks. It's really been an interesting conversation, and I want to thank you for the time, Aisha.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Joe.
Thanks for listening. For more information on this podcast, please check out our podcast channel page at mytotalretail.com/podcasts for show notes. Total Retail Talks is available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and Spotify. Make sure to subscribe on our podcast channel page as well. If you've enjoyed this episode, please take a few moments to rate and review this podcast. Thanks, and until next time, this has been Total Retail Talks.
From our sister brand, Women in Retail Leadership Circle. Join the 2026 Women in Retail Leadership Summit, April 27th through the 29th in Miami, Florida. Save $100 with code PODCAST.